Hello, and welcome to the Centenary Integrated Advising Podcast. I'm Natalie Schaefer, and I'm a student worker in integrated advising, and I'm a third-year student at Centenary College, and I'm a theater and psychology major.
And I'm Arden Miller. I'm also a student worker in integrated advising. I'm a third year, and I'm a theater major with an English minor.
Centenary Integrated Advising is meant to help students create a good foundation for themselves for their journey here at Centenary, and it is located in the lower level of Rotary at the Student Support Center. And for today's episode, we're going to be talking about some warnings for college, just some things that you might want to think about as you come in and prepare yourself for, and just consider throughout your beginning first month. The first thing we want to discuss is roommates. So when you come in, you're randomly assigned a roommate unless you specifically request someone you know, but a lot of people usually are just assigned with someone random.
So when you get your roommate, one of the first things you're going to do is you're going to set up a roommate agreement. You may or may not do this with your RA. Usually you just do it on your own, and an RA will come and talk to you about it. But if you're having problems, go talk to your RA about some things to include in your agreement. Usually there are little prompts, one side you fill out by yourself, and on the other side of the page you fill out with your roommate, and it talks about what time do you usually go to bed, what are your studying habits like, when do you want friends over, when do you not want them over, can you study with or without music, that kind of stuff. So definitely fill that out, and definitely don't just be yeah, okay, I'm good with whatever, because you're not going to be okay with whatever, and it's going to cause tension later in the semester. And it's always good to avoid that. So another thing to remember about your roommate is to be respectful of your roommate's boundaries, but also make sure to be respectful of your own boundaries. So if you're having problems, talk to your roommate about it, see if you can work it out. If your roommate doesn't like having 3 or more friends over after 8 p.m., then don't have 3 or more friends over after 8 p.m. and maybe go to one of their rooms or one of the lobbies in the dorms. And then if your roommate is bringing over 3 friends after 8 p.m. and you don't want that, then talk to your roommate about it and see if you can come to an agreement. So me and my first roommate, we were okay for the most part, but then later towards I guess it was the middle of the semester because we stopped living with each other in November. But we started having a lot of tension because we're not the same kind of people, and we lived very different lifestyles, and it really became a problem when it came to our boundaries. For example, I went to bed at around 10, 11 p.m., midnight at the latest, and I got up in the morning. My roommate would stay up all night long and then sleep literally all day. So it felt like I couldn't even be in the room during the day because I was afraid I was going to wake them up. And then sometimes I had trouble sleeping because they would be awake and doing stuff, coming in and out of the room and that kind of things. We tried to talk about it. Neither of us were willing to change. And this isn't the only reason why I moved out. There are a lot of other reasons, but us just having 2 completely different lifestyles definitely attributed to it.
Yeah, and so to go off that, it's okay to not live with your best friend, because you and your best friend, even though you might be best friends, may live different lives, have different kind of lifestyles. And so no one's going to get hurt or upset if y'all just can't live together. It's okay to put both of y'all's mental health first and to be hey, you know what? I love you, let's keep being friends, but not as roommates, because it can be harmful to your friendship. My first roommate, we had some problems because we were friends, and then we started having problems, and because we just were living different lifestyles, and so we were starting to have a lot of problems. And then as soon as we stopped being roommates, we were able to work on our friendship, and everything was fine, So it's okay to not be roommates with friends or your best friend. You got to find someone who, is going to be able to find those boundaries and be a good roommate.
The same is true for suite mates. I feel like a lot of people kind of forget that you're going to have suite mates, especially in Klein, because you have a lot of suite mates in Klein. Um, but if you don't have to fill out a suite mate agreement, and any of the RAs don't make you do that. But if you're having problems, then I definitely recommend it because you still share a space, like you share your bathroom, and like especially if like maybe someone like leaves their dishes in there all the time, maybe that's something you guys talk about.
So the next thing we want to discuss is your major. So you can come in and you may or may not know what you want to major in. A lot of people do, but also a lot of people don't. And that's okay to not know what you want to major in. Because then you can go ahead and get your core classes out of the way while you're on that journey to try to discover what you want to major in. One of the biggest things I want to say is it's more than okay to switch your major. On average, college students change their major 2 to 3 times, and I came in dead set knowing that I wanted to major in psychology. And then I switched my major. And that's because I wasn't automatically good at it, so I dropped it. But now I'm back to psychology because I know it's what I want to do. And a lot of people switch their majors because they're not automatically good at it and get upset, or they drop it because it's not for them and they discover that. And that's more than okay. You're allowed to discover. Part of college is discovering yourself and figuring out what you want to do with your life. And if you discover what you're majoring in isn't what you want to do with your life, then that's okay and that's allowed. But also, something to keep in mind is when you're on that journey, why are you deciding to drop your major? Is it because you realize it's not for you, or is it because you're not automatically good at it like you were in high school, um, like it was for me? And that's not always the case. My case isn't a very, you know, popular circumstance, but it is a circumstance. It happens for people. So take that into account when you're considering switching majors.
Yeah, and also maybe you discover that your major isn't what you want to do with the rest of your life, but you still really enjoy it and you still want to learn about it. You can still minor in that subject. Like you can say you want to, I don't know, be a theater major, but you still really enjoy political science, so you can minor in political science. Your major and your minors, they don't always have to match up.
Yeah.
So the next thing that we want to talk about is overloading yourself and overwhelming yourself. Whether you're a freshman or not, this is something that every college student struggles with at some point. This is something I definitely struggled with as a freshman because I didn't know about the tools that I had and I didn't have good strategies and coping mechanisms to help me through it. That is something that IA is for. Someone in IA can sit down with you and help you identify the tools that you have and can help teach you how to use them. For example, something I've personally seen and am definitely guilty of is joining a lot of extracurriculars while having a full load of classes. Either someone in IA or in your support team can sit down with you if you're having trouble keeping up with everything. We can go over your schedule and find out what things you want to keep in your schedule and what you're okay with putting on pause for now. College can get really busy out of nowhere, and so it's really important to know when to take a step back from things. It's super important to be involved on campus, don't get me wrong. Some of my best friends I never would have met if I hadn't have stepped out of my comfort zone and gotten involved. However, it is important to know your limits and your boundaries. Some clubs and classes have more commitment than others. But maybe you don't even know what it is that you want to get involved in. Maybe you don't know what clubs there are that you can even join. A great way to find out how to get involved on campus is to go to Campus Connections on August 25th from 5 to 7 in the FIT. Basically, Campus Connections is a club fair, and you can see all the different clubs that NARI has to offer and sign up for them.
Yeah, and so that's a big problem a lot of students have is like having those boundaries between doing too much and like taking care of themselves. Because a lot of people want to go out every weekend with their friends and join all those clubs and do all this and do all that. But like Arden said, there's just not enough time in the day to do all of it. And so while it is important to like go out and do those things and keep your social life, and those are important, you just also have to remember you have to get that assignment done. You have to be able to sleep and eat and shower and take care of yourself and your mental health, because if you don't, it's gonna suck. It's gonna be a hard time. So your freshman year especially is one of the hardest times of trying to differentiate that, because you're so excited and you're enjoying your newfound freedom from being at home all the time. And so you can do whatever you want. So you're like, oh, I want to go do this and I want to go do that. But you also have to remember you have to get those assignments done. And a lot of people push it off and they start slacking. And freshman year is a big wake up call because either they start slacking or they do too much that they're exhausted, and people get really tired really fast and will get burnt out. And that's not good either. So finding those boundaries is important.
Yeah, and even if you don't go out every weekend or even every other weekend and you're not in a bunch of clubs, but you're taking, I think the max is like 18 credit hours. Yeah, if you're taking 18 hours, especially in your first and second semester, like that's a lot to get used to, especially if you're in heavy content courses that require a lot of stuff and also a lot of classes at Centenary. Some of them involve classwork outside where you go and do community service. Or I took a class my freshman year for an education course where I had to go and observe in a classroom for 3 hours a week. I think it was 3 hours, but like that's stuff that you have to consider. And if you might not be able to take 18 hours your first semester. So, and it depends on you and it depends on the courses that you're taking. But it's okay to not be at the max every semester. Like, unless you're just failing classes and slacking off every semester, then like you can still graduate without taking 18 classes or 18 credit hours a semester.
Yeah, that's something a lot of people struggle with is that they feel bad for dropping classes because they overload themselves so they don't, and then they just get stressed out and like are struggling all semester. But it's okay to drop that class as long as you're still at what you need for your financial aid, you know? Like it's okay to drop that class and take it at another time when you're not too overwhelmed. And I think that's an important thing to point out is like that's okay. And it's okay to not take max credit hours every semester as long as you are on the right path for your graduating on time, you know, which is what our degree plans are made for, so you can keep track of that, so you can make sure you're going to graduate on time.
Yeah, take it from someone who's dropped at least one course every semester since they've been here. It's totally okay. All of my teachers that I've dropped, they've been understanding. There was one class that I needed for my major, and I dropped it because I couldn't handle it that semester. I was doing too much, and I took it this past semester, and I did infinitely better than what I would have if I had taken it the first time. If I had taken it that first time, I probably would have failed the course. And a dropped course looks a lot better on a transcript than an F. So one reason why I dropped those courses was to help take care of my mental health. And mental health in college is really important, and keeping it good and healthy is really important. If you're really sick and you have the flu, you're not going to sit there and overload yourself all the time. You're going to sit there and you're going to rest and you're going to get better. And the same is true for your mental health. So one thing that is important for helping to stay on top of that is setting boundaries for others and for yourself. That boundary might be, I'm not going to go out this weekend because I'm really exhausted from this week and I want to get a good night's rest. I want to go to bed at 10 instead of 1. Your boundary might also be, I'm going to eat this many times a day. I'm going to try and get the full 3 meals, because keeping your energy up and eating healthy is really important, both for physical and mental health. And it's also really important not to push yourself too hard, like we've been talking about, because when you push yourself a lot, you're going to get tired and you're going to get sore muscles. And because if you sit there and you work out for 2 hours and you push yourself too hard, you're more likely to get injured. And the same is true for when you push your brain too hard and you push your mental health too hard. You're going to get tired, you're going to get sore, you're going to get injured muscles. And that's just going to put you out of the game for even longer than what it would have been otherwise.
And so while going off of not pushing yourself too hard, you also have to take care of yourself. If you have pushed yourself too hard, or even when you're doing your best, no matter what, you have to take care of yourself. You have to reward yourself for when you have been doing the things you're supposed to. You ate all 3 meals today, great. You completed those assignments on time, great. Reward yourself. Go get that coffee from Randall's. Go play that video game. take that extra hour of sleep, reward yourself, but also like take care of yourself. Do that face mask and, take that extra long shower, or like take the rest when you need it. It's not just push yourself, and then sleep the bare minimum. It's sleep to take care of yourself, eat to take care of yourself. Like you want to be healthy and happy.
It's also important not to be too hard on yourself. Like, don't beat yourself up over everything that you perceive as like you not being able to do whatever your best is. Your best changes from day to day, from moment to moment. So maybe you didn't get that A on that homework assignment that you wanted to. Maybe you got a B or even a C, and that's okay. You can take that and you can learn from that experience. But don't discourage yourself because you weren't able to do your best.
Yeah, yeah, because so one of my favorite things to think is you're doing your best under the circumstances that you're in right now. So maybe when you're at your full energy and you're feeling you're like super great mentally, you can earn that A. But if you're really tired and you're really run down and you haven't been taking care of yourself, maybe your best is that B or that C. So as long as you're doing the best you can under the circumstances you're in, then you're doing your best. And that's really important, is to remember what circumstances you're in. A lot of people tried to beat themselves up over COVID and how they hadn't been doing well. Consider how far you've come while being in a pandemic right now. You're alive, man. That's crazy. You're still in school. You haven't dropped out. So many people have dropped out, and that's okay. If that's what's right for them. But like you're still here. You're still pushing. You're still trying to go to college, and like being proud of yourself is really important. And considering all the strides you're making under the hard circumstances that you're in, whether it's COVID, or maybe you're not doing well mentally, or maybe you're not having a great home life, or you're not getting along with your friends right now. Consider your circumstances and what it means to be doing your best in those circumstances. One last thing I want to say on that and your mental health is to reach out for the help when you need it, because you can't always do it all yourself. Sometimes you need that helpful hand, you need that reassurance, you need to go to see that counselor, you need some help with that assignment. And people get so wrapped up in themselves because, you're human. They're not always going to see that you're struggling. And so if you're struggling, do not be afraid to ask for that help, because so many people want to help you and be on your side and be on your team.
Yeah, and just because you're asking for help, it doesn't mean that you can't do it. It doesn't mean that you're weak or that you've given up. It means that you recognize that right now you don't have all the tools you need to complete that. And so you're going to go out and you're going to get those tools and you're going to get that help. And like the professors and the staff and the faculty here at Centenary, they want to help. They really do. I've never gone to a professor for help and then be like, no, I don't like you. I'm not going to help you. They've always been, wow, I'm really glad you came. Let's figure this out together.
Yeah, and they're so good about it. And surrounding yourself with those good people, like, yeah, the faculty as well, but having that good friendship support system is good too, because, teachers are only available during certain hours. Your friends are available, the good friends are available when you're struggling at 1 a.m., because, yeah, sometimes it's about academic, but also sometimes it's about your mental health and reaching out for help, whether it's the assignment or whether it's you're not doing too hot, either way, having all those resources is good, and feeling good and confident about being able to reach out to them is important. And so, that is why integrated advising is a great resource, because they help you build that support system with advisors and with upperclassmen to help you when you need it academically, but also, not academically. Because even if your advisors are only there for you during certain hours, you can get those upperclassmen to get those inside tips about your major and the social world of Centenary. so they can help connect you with friends and other people and other things. So integrated advising is a good start to get the support system you need to deal with all the incoming problems that you're going to be facing next year and all the what seem to be very scary things. But if you take our warnings and our advice, you can be on top of the problems and the things that are so scary about having to come to college.
Yeah, and you're not going to make the same mistakes we did. Because there were quite a few of them.
Quite a few. But with that being said, be sure to follow us on our Instagram page at Centenary Integrated Advising.
And on Twitter at Centenary IA. And thank you for listening to this podcast. Please feel free to DM us if you have any questions about what we talked about in this or an earlier podcast and what you want to see on future podcasts. Thank you for listening.